Well, when I look at LeBron, we've never had a player rank in the top 5
across all.
in every category.
Welcome to another episode of The Winning Formula presented by Nasdaq. I am your host, Joel Kalani. We have an amazing guest today. Two-time NBA champion, NBA Hall of Famer, Finals MVP, Mr. Isiah Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. You feeling good today?
Yeah.
How early into your career did you start to think about income, business deals, companies, and just your career after basketball? Obviously, from the very beginning, you were a very high draft pick. You knew you had the potential and were probably going to be in the NBA for a long time. But even despite that, you have been able to kind of stand up this sprawling business of yours outside of basketball. How early into your career did you start to think about that?
I started my business career day one.
Yeah.
As soon as I got into the NBA, first thing I did was I bought my mom a home, right? And that was a business decision, right? Because that's how, owning a house is a great way to start the family off in terms of getting started into generational wealth.
Sure,
right?
sure.
How do you help the next generation? And then from talking to my father was like, Junior, you should buy up all the property around the neighborhood that we grew up in. But I had business advisors telling me not to do that.
Really? Okay.
Right? Because they were like, well, this is a bad neighborhood, bad investment, so forth and so on. And my father kept saying, yeah, but this is going to come back. He said, 20 years from now, right? This neighborhood is going to be better than what it is today. I couldn't hear it. I couldn't see it. My advisors couldn't hear it, couldn't see it. Now that area today in Chicago is called the West Loop.
Wow.
It used to be called Skid Row.
Okay, for the region, yeah.
Right? Learning from that, my next business venture actually was with Magic Johnson. We bought a radio station out in Denver. Then after that, I ventured off and started doing some things on my own. Had my own candy bar, had my own ice cream, Again, investing in things that you like. And one of the companies that I just exited out of was Popcorn Indiana, or Indiana Popcorn. Popcorn is a business that I love popcorn. So popcorn is at every major sporting event. It's in everybody's household. But there's really no leading brand. There's no Coca-Cola popcorn. There's no Pepsi-Cola popcorn. And when I started Indiana Popcorn, we had the cream and crimson, so you had the red and white bag. I went to Indiana University.
Yep.
And we thought that we would put colors on the bags, and not only put colors on the bags, but also give you the best popcorn, fresh popcorn, the smell of it, everything else. Now when you walk into your airport, your Walgreens or your stores, you see that red and white bag of Indiana popcorn. I was the co-founder of that. And I've just always invested in things that I like and things that basically I use every day. I had a great mentor by the name of Rick Intertone. And this one got me on the cover of Forbes magazine. His family started Intercom computer stores across the U.S. And we bought a company called American 3D Printing out of bankruptcy. And when we bought that company out of bankruptcy, he was the one who kind of mentored me and, kind of showed me kind of the ropes in terms of how you can have a 700 quick print franchise chain and then convert it from franchise model to a single entity model. So, and I used that business model actually when I bought the CVA, converted it from a franchise model to a single entity model.
Yeah.
Then the NBA used the single entity model to start the WNBA.
Fascinating. And so, and you mentioned this just now with Magic Johnson. Did your friendship with Magic Johnson begin in that vein around business deals? How did that actually come to fruition? You mentioned him being one of the earlier players that you kind of went into deals with, and obviously, he came into the league in '79. But How did that friendship kind of sprout, and how did it kind of blossom into eventually, having these deals before you went off on your own and started to do your own thing?
We both wanted more out of life than
Mm.
just being basketball players. And both of us were interested in business. So the conversations that we would have around working together, learning the game, partnering, naturally it took us into business. And we did a couple of business deals together that, we were successful in.
And he always mentions as well with his mentor how, Dr. Buss was the one who kind of taught him the business of the Lakers at the time when he was a player. When it comes to the printing company that you just mentioned, was that happening during your playing career or just after?
Oh, no, that was during my playing career. All the businesses that I named to you, with the exception of the popcorn, all those are during my playing career.
That's fascinating.
So I was doing this while I was playing. Yeah.
So were off seasons even really off seasons for you?
Off seasons, I was in school. I left school. I left school early. So I went first semester, second semester. I went double sessions back at Indiana University. I left school in '81, and it took me another, 6 years to complete.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up graduating in '87.
Yeah, and then of course masters.
Then I went on and got my master's in education from UC Berkeley. So I've been a student basically all my life, educationally and also business-wise, but also basketball-wise. So in the academy, in the business world, and in the sports world, that's where I've been.
When you speak to young players today, do you stress education as an important point? Because a lot of the times,
I start with this. This is what my father taught me. A fool and his money shall soon part.
Yeah, it's a good quote.
The best thing you can do with the money that you're making now for NBA players is, I tell them, the best thing you can do now is save it. Because most of them may not be equipped enough business-wise and educationally to do some of the things that I was able to do. My educational background is a lot different than most NBA players, but my business background was different also. So combining those two gave me an opportunity to have a head start. When I'm giving advice to most NBA players who I look at, if they don't have those two components, the best thing they can do is save their money. And I let them know that very rarely are you going to make any investment or start any company where you're going to, at this early stage of your career, bring $7-8 million to the bottom line.
Immediately.
Yeah. Right now, in your NBA career, you're bringing $7-8 million to the bottom line. I don't care what business you're thinking about going into, very rarely are you going to bring that to the bottom line. So the best business you have right now is the business that you're in.
And there's definitely some re-education that then needs to happen there, because they may think, these checks that I'm getting now, I need to just keep getting these exact same checks when I retire, and that's not necessarily the way it works.
That ain't how it works.
Yeah.
See, when I was playing, if you were bringing a couple of $100,000 to the bottom line in basketball, that wasn't enough. So business-wise, right, you can look at starting and going into business where you can say, okay, I can bring $1 million or $2 million to the bottom line. So this works for me. But now when you, in basketball, the way the sport has grown, when you're bringing $7, $8, $9, $10 million to the bottom line, very rarely are you going to find a business that you're getting ready to bring $10 million. Damn, it just not going to happen. So my advice to most of them is save your money.
Would you say, with the way the CBAs have gone, the TV deals are so lucrative now, we'll probably see a supermax contract that's over $500 million in our lifetimes?
Oh, in probably 2-3 years.
Yeah, soon. Would you say that has an impact on young players' ability to actually even think they need to invest, think they need to manage their money? Because the rookie contracts are so large, the second contracts are so large. That's different than the generation you came in, where the numbers weren't that large yet.
Yeah. This generation of player, while we always thought about taking care of our families with generational wealth, we had to exit outside of the NBA to do that. This generation, they don't have to exit outside of the NBA. They really just have to maintain and do what they do. They don't necessarily have to risk, keyword risk, any capital or invest in anybody else's ideas other than their own.
And that's fascinating because then there's a shift in mentality almost.
Yeah.
On like how it's been done in the past versus how it needs to be done now. Would you say, from what you can tell, obviously you said you had to go beyond the NBA in your day to kind of find that generational wealth. But here, if you just get that all-star selection, get those, incentives that get you there, do you think that's good for the game in the sense that like it makes it more competitive? It makes it much more of a thing where you don't have to focus on unrelated things to basketball during your career, just focus on basketball. Would that improve the product in your view? Because that's the main thing they have to focus on and they'll be set.
Well, it depends on the person who's getting the money.
Yeah, fair.
Right? And if the person who's getting the money is thirsty enough to want to improve and get better,
yeah,
he has all the tools, he has all the resources to make it happen. And if it don't happen, that's on the person, that's on the player.
Genuine question, as someone obviously Hall of Famer, longtime NBA All-Star, what percentage at any given time in the NBA of all the players would you say genuinely want to win?
Oh, 100% of them want to win.
Yeah, 100. You think everyone wants to win?
Everybody wants to win.
Okay.
Just like everybody wants to be successful. You ask anybody walking up there, do you want to win? Yeah. Now, how many are willing to really be disciplined enough to win, pay the price to win, and make the sacrifices to win? That's when, you start weeding people out.
Yeah.
And then how many are smart enough to win? Because that's another level.
You always talk about the mental.
Yeah, mental is the physical as 4 is to 1. Basketball is a thinking man's game. And if you can't think, you can't play it. Right?
Yeah. And it's fascinating you say that because obviously you had years of, going to the playoffs, not getting over the hill yet before you officially did and went back to back.
Yeah.
And that can take a toll on you.
Yeah.
There's many players, great players who got to the conference finals, maybe got to a finals, and then the following year tailed off, something happens with the roster, fatigue, things like that. So would you say by and large, the winning formula, what's necessary to win a title has always remained the same for the most part? It's about the risks, about the sacrifices, about the extra work?
Yes.
No matter what, yeah.
Because at the pro level, everyone has relatively the same skill level and relatively the same athleticism. There really aren't very many separators. The separators are,
the thinkers.
The thinkers.
Yeah. So we have a segment here at Nasdaq on the winning formula called Crunch Time, where we ask some fan submitted questions. Just have a few for you, and we'll get started with this. In no particular order, in your view, at this moment, 3 greatest point guards of all time.
I would say Magic, Oscar, and then depending on your taste, me or Steph. We both have won, and we both have been successful at our size.
Yeah.
We both did it differently. He did it with great shooting.
Yeah.
I did it with scoring and assisting.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of choice there.
Was it the most recent title in Boston that officially put him over that, like after having losing seasons, coming back and getting back to the mountaintop? Is that point in time where you felt like Steph got the nod for you for being one of those all-timers?
No, it didn't take that.
Yeah.
That helped.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But no, to me, at his size, what he's been able to do in the game and win, because there have been a lot of great players our size, but he and I are the only one that can say that we won. Everybody else can say, yeah, I was good. But
scoring titles.
Yeah, you got all that. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, one's holding the trophy, the other's not. Winners over here, the losers over there.
I got you.
Right?
I got you.
And so I would say, Magic and Oscar, because of their size, they have an advantage over Steph and I genetically. But, depending on your preference,
Mm-hmm.
do you like Steph or do you like me? But to me, that's the point guard conversation.
From what you can remember, one of the hardest series that you actually won in terms of 6 games, whether finals or an Eastern Conference Finals, was there a series that sticks out to you in your memory? Like, I don't know how we pulled it off, but we pulled it off. That was extremely difficult, but you kind of got over the hump. Maybe,
Celtics.
yeah.
Beating the Celtics in '88.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we. I'm glad I know how we did it.
Okay.
I'm just, man, that beating them mentally and physically, that was my greatest basketball challenge because they were so smart,
Mm.
and very rarely did they make mistakes, and they just knew what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they also taught us.
Mm.
They were great teachers too. So beating the Celtics in '88, that was
Because you had lost them the year before.
lost them in '87.
Yeah. That was part of probably the learning process to then come back the next year. Did you go into that '88 series confident? Did you think like, okay, I know how it went last year. We have a strong game plan? Or as the series went on, did your confidence kind of grow?
I was always confident,
Mm-hmm.
but I was always scared
Okay. Gotcha.
because they were that good.
Yeah.
And talent-wise, they were far superior in talent than
Mm-hmm.
we were. When you talk about Bird, McHale,
Yeah, Hall of Famers.
Parrish, Dennis Johnson, Haynes, Bill Walton, they had it all, right?
Yeah.
So talent-wise, they were at a different talent level than we were. Mental and concentration-wise, we could match them, but then we got to a point where we could think on their level and sustain the thinking throughout the course of the game.
That's a good point about keeping the mental game up throughout all 4 quarters. So last one on crunch time for you. In terms of eras, obviously your era of basketball versus now, dramatically different. Do you have a preference in which era you would have liked to play in? Do you like the one you play in now, or do you feel like coming into an era now that's far less physical, you would have been 20-time All-Star, 8-time MVP or something like that, just because of the difference in physicality and the way the game's called now?
If I dominated in the era that I was in, I'm positive I'll dominate in this era too. The two games are different.
Sure.
They're just totally different games. I prefer my era, the way we had to play, because there was more thinking involved. Unfortunately, the game has really been dumbed down a lot. And I was listening to Tom Brady talk about football the other day, and his complaint was that football has been dumbed down a lot in this era, for the quarterbacks. And I would say in this era of basketball, the game has really been dumbed down a lot, offensively and defensively. But, the players are just as skilled.
Yeah.
They just don't have to know as much and think as much as we did back in that era.
So you would say your average all-star point guard in the 80s and early 90s would, on average, be probably smarter than what's necessary to be an all-star today, just because of the amount of thinking that you had to do in your era.
Oh yeah, you had to come to a game, and you had a game plan that not only did you have to execute, but you also had to recognize the other team's game plan. So not only were you playing against the team, but you were playing against that coach. That's why they call it a coach on the floor. So, I had to know, you had to know all the material, and you had to know the tendencies. What play call they're coming out of the huddle with, right? Now they have like 20 assistant coaches to tell you that. Back then we had to know that. And then you had to articulate that to your team. So, an amount of studying you had to do the night before, because every team played different. Now every team runs the same play. Hell, you even know the play. High pick and roll to the basket, spot up, shoot a three. You're going to see that if there are 100 possessions, you're going to see that 90 times, right? And even you know it, right? This is what's getting ready to happen. This guy going to be in that corner shooting. So even if you get lost on defense, right, which you shouldn't, because you know where everybody's standing at. You know, and this is what makes Golden State so good, because they have movement, so you don't know where everybody's going to be. Most teams you play against, you know, they're going to have a guy in the corner, they're going to play half pick and roll, they have somebody spotted up here waiting for a three, another guy in that corner over there waiting for a three. And if you get lost, just run to one of these spots.
I mean, speaking of that, I mean,
and that's where you're going to find your
You got
player.
fans doing breakdowns now, right? On social media.
Yeah.
So I guess final piece on that, Bron, Jordan, do you have a preference between the two? Just because you're talking about cerebral intelligence, all that in the game. Bron obviously very famous for that, knowing where everyone's supposed to be at all times. Was there anyone that you, in your mind, is still like, no, he's still the GOAT, or have you?
Well, when I look at LeBron, we've never, and the numbers back it up.
Sure, yeah. You set records.
We have never, ever seen a player like this.
Yeah.
There's never been a player in our league that has the most points, second or third or fourth in rebounding. I looked the other night, hell, he's getting ready to pass. He's already passed me in assists.
Assists, right? Yeah.
He's passed Magic Johnson in assists. And he's getting ready to pass somebody else in assists, right? So when you look at assists, rebounds, points, steals, we've never had a player rank in the top 5
across all
in every category.
Yeah,
now we've had a player that dominated in scoring, we've had a player that dominated in rebounding, had a player that dominated in assists. We've never had a player to do all of them for 20 years.
Thank you so much for your time today, Isiah. That was the winning formula presented by Nasdaq. Thank you so much for joining us. Isiah Thomas, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.